Let's talk about the evolution of stress. It's easy to forget most of our existence here on earth as Homo sapiens, we have been hunters and gatherers. And the response to stress, how our body physiology responded to stress, was important to protect our lives. Because, as you can see from this rock art from southern Algeria, which is dating back to 6000 BC, that the, the ancient men had to deal with wild animals and rival tribe enemies. And this was a life-threatening situation. But what's happening today? This evolutionary fight or flight response cascade is turned on even during non-threatening situations in our daily lives. And this is what is the reason that the physiological protection against acute stress has now turned into a destructive, smoldering chronic stress. And I'll talk about how. So, how does stress affect the cardiovascular system? In fact, how does chronic stress affect the cardiovascular system? This is how. It starts a chain of cascade, starting with the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis activation. There's a cortisol production. Catecholamines are produced and secreted. The autonomic nervous system is activated. And as a result, there's a domino effect. There's a thrombotic state, there's an inflammatory state, and so on and so forth, eventually leading to atherosclerosis and in predisposed patients, arrhythmias. We'll be talking about autonomic imbalance in the later slides. This is a large study, more than 1 lakh participants who, without cardiovascular disease at baseline, these participants were analyzed for their stress at baseline and followed up for 10 years. And what was shown in this pure study cohort was that the cardiovascular disease, all-cause mortality, stroke, all increased with increasing baseline stress. This is again a very elegant demonstration of the brain-heart interactions because of stress. You can see here that if there is a sympathetic activation, it leads to effects such as heart attacks, cardiomyopathies, and in predisposed individuals, dangerous arrhythmias. If there is a parasympathetic overactivity, it can precipitate sudden cardiac death, again in predisposed individuals who have long QT type 3 or who have Brugada syndrome. Also, certain atrial arrhythmias, including atrial fibrillation, are associated with the parasympathetic high state. Now, we are talking about yoga today, and we know that most of the audience here is aware that it's an ancient form of mind-body intervention. And in the 3rd century BC, sage Patanjali defined yoga as a means to controlling the fluctuations of the mind. But today I'm going to be talking about the emerging scientific evidence of yoga. Again, most of the audience is aware of this, but still the lay people think that yoga is just physical postures and breathing practices, but it's much more. Clearly, there is yama and niyama, which are guidelines for a healthy lifestyle, and also techniques for mindfulness, focus, and meditation. A lot of studies have demonstrated the positive impact of yoga on the autonomic, neurohormonal, immune, and metabolic systems, as well as its anti-inflammatory effects. Now, these are the neuroanatomic pathways of the parasympathetic nervous system. I'm showing you this because I wanted to describe how yoga actually works. Now, you can see the vagal nerves are carrying all the information to the centers in the brain that mediate interoceptions, threat perceptions, and therefore control emotions, thoughts, and somatic expression. And the vagal efferents, one in blue, from the nucleus ambiguous, constitute the vagal brake. Now, how does yoga act? So focus on the slow breathing part. Breathing is the only autonomic function that can be voluntarily controlled. This provides a gateway to modulate how our brains perceive, interpret, and respond to a situation. The only other technique to modulate the autonomic function is meditation. There is ample evidence that yoga breathing interventions increase heart rate variability, improve sympathovagal balance, and promote stress resilience. Now, here at the Center for Integrative Medicine and Research at the All India Institute of Medical Sciences, we are geared towards finding scientific evidence of yoga as a therapeutic modality for tackling our diseases. Guided by the vision of our Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi ji, the CIMR was established in 2016 to advance Indian traditional medicine through robust scientific evidence, aiming for its worldwide acceptance as an effective clinical modality. So we've done a lot of studies. We are collaborating with more than 20 departments and specialities. We have published more than 30 papers in different specialities. But today, I will be talking about cardiovascular disease. This was a study that we published some time back in the Journal of American College of Cardiology. This was regarding vasovagal syncope, which is a very common clinical condition. 1/3 of the population experiences a syncope at least once in their lifetime. Existing therapies for people who have recurrent vasovagal syncope are at best have modest efficacy. So we thought that let us see how yoga can modulate the autonomic nervous system and perhaps help in this situation. So it was a randomized controlled trial. We took patients who had recurrent vasovagal syncope, divided them into two arms. One arm received yoga and guideline-based standard therapy, and the other arm received only guideline-based standard therapy. We analyzed the patients at 1 year of follow-up. And what we found was that patients who practiced yoga had a much lesser number of mean episodes of syncope and pre-syncope. Also, their quality of life was much better in all domains. We've done a meta-analysis, which is under review at the moment, which showed that all the major studies, which were 4, showed a reduction in the number of clinically relevant episodes of vasovagal syncope. Yes, there was heterogeneity, but that heterogeneity was driven chiefly by the observational studies and not in the RCTs. So this was the postulated mechanistic explanation that we put forward. We try to put such a mechanistic explanation for all our papers, all our studies. So we here for vasovagal syncope, we postulated that yoga acts at multiple levels in the cascade. And it starts off by enhancing the vascular and muscle tone, preventing venous pooling in the legs, in the lower limbs. It acts on the sympathetic overstimulation, and that is by slow breathing exercises and relaxation techniques, and prevents the overstimulation of the ventricle, which is an important part in the cascade. Meditation and mindfulness acts on the central triggers, alleviates stress, and the autonomic balance is improved. And because of the enhanced vascular muscle tone, there is a prevention of bradycardia and hypotension, and the vasovagal syncope is aborted. Now let's talk about another important group of patients. These are very sick patients who receive ICDs. ICDs can deliver shocks to prevent sudden cardiac death, and they can actually, they're very useful, but they're associated with significant psychological morbidity, with almost a third of the patients having depression and anxiety. Now, the depression and anxiety in turn can trigger arrhythmias. So it can become a vicious cycle. So what we wanted to see was whether yoga can be a useful strategy to reduce these ICT therapies and improve the well-being of these patients. So this was the hypothesis, and we randomized 100 patients. This was a pilot study. So 50 patients underwent in the yoga arm, did yoga practice for 40 minutes for 5 days a week. The primary objectives were to assess the quality of life, anxiety and depression scores, and the ventricular arrhythmia burden. And the results were quite encouraging. Yoga improved quality of life, anxiety, and depression. It led to a lesser number of arrhythmic events. So this is another study that we've just completed and are in the process of publishing. This was using yoga as a cardiac rehabilitation therapy in post-angioplasty patients. So cardiac rehabilitation is very important to optimize recovery after either a procedure or a cardiovascular event. It is important to optimize functional capacity in these patients and also the quality of life and psychological health. It's no wonder that it's a class 1 recommendation in all major guidelines. So this was our objective. We wanted to see whether yoga can improve exercise duration and quality of life in these patients. Now, the rationale behind using yoga for cardiac rehab is what I wanted to show you. And this is how we devise our studies. So we know that cardiac rehab has 3 main principles of stress reduction, physical fitness, and lifestyle changes. We hypothesized and put forward that yoga can deal with all these 3. So by stress reduction, I mean that yoga has breathing exercises and meditation, as we talked about earlier. For physical fitness, there are yogic asanas, postures, and exercise. And for lifestyle changes, the first 2 principles of the Ashtanga Yoga, which are yama and niyama, which are the best lifestyle advice that you can get. So we went ahead and performed the study, 200 patients divided into 2 arms, 1 arm standard therapy plus yoga, the other arm standard therapy alone. And we analyzed these patients for exercise tolerance and quality of life at 3 and 6 months. The exercise tolerance was objectively analyzed by subjecting these patients to treadmill test. And as you can see, there was an improvement in exercise duration, and also there was an improvement across all quality of life domains. This is another interesting study that we've just completed. We wanted to see the effectiveness of yoga nidra in improving sleep quality in patients with coronary artery disease. And as you know, that coronary artery disease patients have very often they experience poor sleep, and in fact, poor sleep quality has been associated with coronary artery disease because of progression of atherosclerosis. And so we wanted to see how Yoga Nidra can help. And for those who don't know, Yoga Nidra is a form of guided meditation. It's easy, logistically simple, and perhaps very effective. So 144 patients were divided into 2 arms. 1 arm underwent Yoga Nidra and sleep hygiene. The other arm was subjected only to sleep hygiene. And we wanted to assess the primary outcome, which was sleep efficiency, and that was measured objectively by using an actigraphy watch. And these are the results. Sleep efficiency was far better in patients who practiced Yoga Nidra. And also the depression and the perceived stress improved. So the conclusion, Yoga Nidra was effective for enhancing sleep quality and reducing the psychological burden in these patients. And so there are several other studies, but I would like to end here. This is our team at the Center for Integrative Medicine and Research at AIIMS, New Delhi. And whatever I have presented is because of their efforts. And I thank you for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma, for the excellent explanation from the heart of the country's premier institute, All India Institute. It gives us a lot of